So Sam and I have decided to do our presentation on Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Obviously, this is still an unsolved case, so our presentation kind of differs a little bit from the rest of the class, which we'll kind of get into a little bit later as we get into the slides.
So in the disappearance of Malaysian Flight 370, it was a Boeing 777-200ER. There was 227 passengers on board this flight with 12 crew members. This led to 239 fatalities presumed because it has never been solved, with 0 survivors presumed.
A little bit of background information about the flight. It was scheduled to fly from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. They were planning to cross the South China Sea at about flight level 350. It was just then when they crossed the northeastern border of Malaysia where civilian radar contact was lost. Just soon after that radar contact was lost, the flight ended up making a gradual turn to the right about 30 to 40 degrees and then immediately began a steep turn to the left. Ended up traveling to the western coast of Malaysia about 250 miles. It was then that military radar contact was lost. After the NTSB report was released, it was concluded that 1 out of the 2 transponders that was on board that flight either malfunctioned or deactivated in flight. So this could be a result of either a systems failure on flight or deactivation from, it could have been either the pilot, flight engineer, or even possibly a hijacker on board. So just some continued information on the background of the flight. So this is an image to give you a better visual idea of the plane's exact flight path. So it flew back across the Malay Peninsula, which is on the western coast, and banked around the island Penang. From there, it flew northwest up to the Strait of Malacca and out across the Andaman Sea, where it faded beyond radar range into obscurity, so all radar range was lost. And that part of the flight took about 6 hours, and this kind of came to the conclusion that this couldn't have been a standard case of a hijacking. As a result of this, the most expensive search in aviation history was initiated. It ended up costing over $44 million and covered about 4.5 million square kilometers of ocean. And although this case is unsolved and it's currently closed right now, it could still possibly open up again. So these numbers could possibly change in England.
So a little into what happened in the accident. The Malaysian regime was said to be one of the most corrupt in the region. It was also proving itself to be furtive, fearful, and unreliable in its investigation of the flight. Accident investigators dispatched from Europe, Australia, and the United States were shocked by the scene they encountered when arriving to help. Delay in reaction to the issue, as well as delay in information being reported to other teams in the investigation, led to false searches and wasted time and resources. Because the Malaysians withheld what they knew, the initial sea searches were concentrated in the wrong place, the South China Sea, and found no floating debris. After learning of the aircraft's potential flight in the Indian Ocean from Malaysian military radar contact, pieces of the plane had washed up into multiple locations along the Indian Ocean. Some evidence found in the search. So here's a diagram of the 777 and some confirmed and highly likely parts that they found in the Indian Ocean. Some confirmed parts are a wing fragment, which was found in 2016 in Mauritius. Another one is a flap found in July 2015 on Reunion Island. And another flap was found on Pemba Island, also in the summer of 2016. So the pilots involved in Malaysian 370. Pilot in command was 53-year-old Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah from Penang. He joined Malaysia Airlines as a cadet pilot in 1981. And after training and receiving his commercial pilot's license, he became a second officer with the airline in 1983. Leading up to the accident, he became one of the most senior captains at Malaysia Airlines. And the first officer, Mr. Farik, joined Malaysia Airlines in 2007 at the age of 20 years old, but only recently started co-piloting the Boeing 777. He had gained about 2,700 hours of flight experience when Malaysian 370 went missing, but authorities have revealed that he was on his first flight aboard a Boeing 777 as a fully approved pilot. Neither pilot raised suspicion in the disappearance of Malaysian Flight 370 in the final report.
So now to get into the possible root/active causes. So obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is an unsolved case. So these causes are obviously going to be possible. There's no no for sure cause of what happened with this flight. With that being said, so at 1:37 a.m., the flight's regularly scheduled 30-minute automatic condition reporting system failed to transmit. And simply put, it's exactly how it sounds. It's just a system that will automatically report just kind of like the flight data and flight conditions that the flight is experiencing. So this kind of led me to believe that it could possibly be a transponder issue or maybe even a radar issue. So a second possible cause is that there's a dispatcher working at Malaysia Airlines that had sent a text message to the captain of the flight, and that text message ended up going unanswered. So this could lead you to believe that possibly there could be a hijacking or maybe some kind of service issue with the text not going through. Third, every one of the passengers and cabin crew members was investigated, and there was no suspicious things found. But I think it's important to note that there were 2 passengers on board that had fake passports, but those fake passports weren't used in an attempt to try and hijack the airplane with a false identity, but was rather used to flee a country that was war-ridden. And lastly, there's just obviously many different theories surrounding the appearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. I even attached a picture below of the simulated flight that the captain had taken just days prior to the actual flight. And as you can see, that red line, that is a simulated flight, and it takes off out of Kuala Lumpur, where it then flies over the Indian Ocean and eventually crashes into the Indian Ocean after fuel exhaustion. So some people were led to believe that this could have been pilot-initiated, this whole accident, and that maybe the captain led the plane into the Indian Ocean.
So a little about the safety culture of Malaysia Airlines. They had a historically safe airline with only 2 accidents recently in 2014. This would be a Malaysian Flight 17 and 370. Due to those 2 accidents in 2014, the FAA downgraded their safety rating from a 1 to a 2. So also in 2014, Malaysian Flight 17 was shot down over Ukraine 4 months later, and this was believed to be done by Russian-backed rebels in Crimea. This Malaysian Flight 17 went into an area that other airlines had refused to fly over, despite the extra fuel costs involved in flying around the dangerous spot. And this led me to believe that there was an organizational error here, as they were taking safety concerns not heavy enough and more economic measures, and this led them to fly through a dangerous zone and end up being shot down over a politically unsafe area. And after these 2 incidents, the director Ahmad Yohare Yahya, I'm sorry for that mispronunciation if it was wrong, had his contract ended after the loss of 537 lives under 2 flights on his watch.
So before getting into the Swiss cheese model and applying it to this case, I first wanted to share this quote by James Reason. "A series of human factor problems forms an error chain, and any one of the links in this chain had been broken, the accident may have been prevented. It might be done by building in measures/defenses, which may not permit an error at one or more of the stages." So now getting into the Swiss cheese model and applying it. So before we apply it and discuss how it applies to this case exactly, so the Swiss cheese model is a model that we use in risk analysis and also risk management. And so the cheese slices represent different layers, indicating flaws that might happen in the system that would lead to some kind of incident or accident. So it starts with the organizational layer, or kind of like the management layer. So it was reported in this case that there was issues with Malaysia Airlines flight following system, so they weren't able to accurately pinpoint the airline's position and accurately follow the flight. Getting in the supervision layer, the first officer was still in training for the 777, and obviously if there's a distracted captain for whatever reason and he's not able to help out the first officer, then mistakes could happen. Now you have unsafe precondition layer. Pilot fatigue could have been likely. The flight took off at 12:41 local time. Night flying could have also resulted in navigation problems or even autokinesis. And unsafe acting layer. So ATC wasn't following standard operating procedures. In the ATSB report, it showed evidence that air traffic controllers that were monitoring the flight progress for Malaysia Airlines 370, the Kuala Lumpur Area Control Center had not informed Ho Chi Minh Area Control Center that the flight was to be monitored by Vietnam 3 minutes earlier than its original estimated time. So when Ho Chi Minh Area Control Center wasn't able to establish two-way communication with the flight, it should have alerted its Kuala Lumpur counterpart within 5 minutes according to the standard operating procedures. However, they didn't do it within that 5 minutes. Instead, they waited a full 12 minutes later.
So here we have a short little video that goes into more detail on the investigation of the flight and all the little gaps and delays in figuring out what happened.
Here goes. 1:07 a.m. The transponder sends back an automated message saying all's okay. 1:19 a.m. The co-pilot signs off with all right, good night, leaving Malaysian airspace. 1:21 a.m. The transponder stops working. We now know that at 1:28 a.m. Thai radar saw an unidentified blip along an unexpected westward track, but did nothing about it. It took 11 days for that news to emerge. Around the same time of morning, Vietnamese civil aviation see what they think was MH370 heading westward. Twice they contact the Malaysians. It takes days to hear anything back. 2:15 a.m. Malaysian military radar spots an unidentified blip here at Pulau Perak in the Strait of Malacca. Again, this took days to learn. So much wasted time. Yes, families threw water bottles at Malaysian officials. They've talked of suing, of going on hunger strikes, and every waking moment they wonder. The world is running scenarios. Here's one. If this was a plane in trouble, sort of smoke in the cockpit trouble, where could a pilot go? All are trained to know their exit routes. Here's a compilation of options that night. Some 634 runways with roughly 1,500 meters of landing strip, what a 777 would need. Problem is, start eliminating some for distance and difficulty, say mountains in the way, and options shrink. A theory of a Canadian pilot points right here to an airstrip on Pulau Langkawi on the west coast of Malaysia. It's where he says his gut tells him good pilots would go. It's also directly in line with the plane's strange westward turn. Chris Goodfellow accurately described it as a 3,900-meter landing strip with an approach over water at night, no obstacles. Simple, so smart, but the nearby waters have been reportedly searched. Nothing. Seems the plane just kept going. Where to and why, and how would we know? Ground and air radar are key. Watch this. First a map of the known civilian radar zones where the plane first went missing, and then military radar take over. These are what we believe to be the region's capabilities. It's vague because there are countries that want to keep secret military assets and information secret. The public may not be told what they have or saw. And yes, count that as a frustration for Malaysian officials.
I can confirm that we have received some radar data, but we are not at liberty to release information from other countries. I appeal to all our partners to continue volunteering any of and all information that could help us with the investigation and the search for MH370.
The Indians, by the way, have said they didn't see anything, and add that they may have turned off the radar in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands that weekend because they didn't think they'd need them. And no nation saw fit to scramble jets to intercept the plane, that supposed unidentified blip at least a few saw. Messy, this matter of a missing plane, especially in a region that is a geopolitical puzzle. 11 days and a search zone almost as big as Canada. 26 countries now part of the hunt because they have to be, because the last source of information on the plane is disturbingly vague. The view from space, that's where the information's coming from, not the space station, which took these images of the area a few months ago, but from a single satellite. An Inmarsat satellite, a geostationary one 36,000 kilometers up. Somehow, for several hours, it recorded a type of handshake from MH370, and it knows it's that plane, apparently, because every handshake is unique. Based on the angle of the signal and the distance from the Earth, Inmarsat believed the plane must have traveled along one of two specific lines, so evident on a map, so horrifyingly vast and vague back on Earth.
Finally, getting into the preventative measures and recommendations. So obviously the aircraft itself wasn't located, although some parts of the aircraft were either very closely confirmed, or likely, or very likely. The aircraft's flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder couldn't be recovered. So as of now, the only information available to the investigators is from other sources. So being able to actually triangulate and locate that plane is pretty much proven to be nearly impossible. However, there have been improvements made to the tracking systems over the years as a result of this, specifically with the commercial airliners. So it's this kind of handshaking process where it interacts with the tracking system every 15 to 30 minutes, and it gives off GPS position, altitude, heading, and speed data. And then lastly, recommendations have been made to increase battery life on underwater locator beacons, which the ATSB was hoping would help them find the plane. Unfortunately, it didn't. They also want to lengthen the recording times on the flight data recorders and the cockpit voice recorders, and also have higher standards for aircraft position reporting, especially over the open ocean. And here's our references. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.